Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Myers, and I'm here to just walk you through the syllabus like I would do my first day of class if we were in person. So the syllabus is going to be vague in some ways, but more specific as we get down through it. So you'll see our learning outcomes that I want you all to learn about how we study and treat and apply the ideas around psychology of gender. We want to examine psychological constructs within a critical eye towards diversity, equity, inclusivity, and intersectionality. We want to be exposed to primary source readings. The Lanahan book will do this for you. And then engage via class discussions and different types of assignments. So your two books for the class are Liz Richmond and Urchel's Psychology of Women and Gender, and then Robert's The Lanahan Readings and the Psychology of Women. And both of those should be available, used, etc. We sort of expect you to have some psychology background, but you can usually catch yourself up pretty quickly if you don't. This course is entirely asynchronous. That means we're not going to meet as a group ever. You're going to complete the work on your own time with assignments due Wednesday and Sunday of each week. These are the overall points for the class. So there will be 1,000 points total. So if you miss one little point here or there, please don't freak out. You're going to have plenty of time to make up for it. All right, so one of your first assignments is to make an introductory video where you introduce yourself to the rest of the class. You'll post it on Blackboard. Sometimes Blackboard is iffy about uploading videos, so what you can do then is like upload it to YouTube or Google Drive and then post the link instead. And there are 5 quick prompts: your preferred name, your pronouns, your major, your goal month and year of graduation, and why you're taking the course. Another thing you're going to do by the end of module 2 is to schedule a meeting with me. These are 5 to 10 minutes. It's just a time for us to get to know each other if we don't, to check in if we do, and then also for you to ask questions about the course. This becomes really important because sometimes it's a lot easier to understand if we're sort of virtually face-to-face instead of over email. So I have a link you follow to schedule that. And if you can't find a time that works, you can email me and we can schedule something at a different time. This is a course that when I teach it in person, I don't lecture. We sit in a circle and we talk to each other. And so I try to replicate that as much as I can in the virtual classroom. And so there's a lot of discussion posts that you'll be doing and replying to each other's discussion posts and blogs. We are going to talk about topics that make people uncomfortable. This is a course where we're going to talk about abortion, miscarriage, eating disorders, sexual assault, a whole host of things that are going to touch all of us in very personal ways. 2 things with that: we're not doing that to make people uncomfortable on purpose. It is part of the curriculum, right? The other thing is that to just keep in mind things might be sensitive for others that aren't sensitive for you, right? So to please be respectful in your discussion and have some sensitivity and empathy. Also, because of that, a lot of people will try to only talk about their own experiences. And while I fully acknowledge that's an important piece of this, I'm going to challenge you all to tie your personal experiences directly to the reading. So if we were in class and you had your book open, you might say, oh, I've had this experience and it relates to this passage right here, right? So that's almost easier online because you could like copy paste a quote, right? Or something along those lines. And I highly encourage you to do that. When you're responding, please don't be like, yeah, good job, I gotcha, right? I'm asking you to engage, to respond thoughtfully. And usually we have really, really good discussions that happen in these. I cannot serve as anyone's therapist for two reasons. One, it would be an ethical violation because I can't serve as your professor and your therapist. The second is that even though my PhD is in clinical psychology, I am not licensed, so it would be illegal. The state, the Commonwealth of Virginia could come after me. That being said, we have the counseling center available virtually and for free for students. So I highly recommend you work with them if you need support. Another thing, because of the topics we talk about in this class, that it's important to bring up is that any VW employee who does not have guaranteed confidentiality is a mandated reporter. Um, that means if you bring up an experience you've had on campus, I have to report it. Now, there are ways I can do that anonymously, but I'd like to put that out there so that people know, because I don't like people to be surprised. You should own your own story. So you'll get 20 points each week for these discussions. And here is your rubric of how I will award those points. And if you don't post one, you get a 0. Simple, easy, right? At midterm and final, you will be asked to rate your participation in these discussions and other things. And so this is the rubric you'll be asked to use at that time. You will be asked to lead discussion for one topic of the class. So half a module, essentially one chapter of the list book. And this assignment replicates when I teach in class and ask students to lead discussion for an entire 75-minute class period. So imagine you're sitting in a virtual circle with your classmates. What would you ask or say to get them talking? So what I say is 5 to 8 posts, and they can be anything. So you can link like articles, YouTube videos, news stories, social media posts. You can just ask questions about specific passages of the readings. They can be the primary sources, it can be the Roberts book. And the biggest thing is you want to get your fellow classmates talking. Now, for the first week, I've done the discussion posts because y'all didn't have any chance to do it, right? I have put up lots of examples of different types of questions. It's about double the amount of posts you'll need to make if you are leading, but I wanted to give you lots of different examples to pull from. So you'll be rated by both me and your fellow students. There will be a link to a Google form where you will rate your fellow student each week, each chapter actually. So 2 students a week. And actually we're a fairly big class, so we'll probably be more than 1 student per topic. So during this first module, you'll be asked to list 3 chapters essentially. To see which one you would like. And then I asked you to list 3 because on the off chance everybody wants to do older women, right? I have to kind of redistribute. You're going to post your questions and prompts when you do lead by Wednesday so that everybody has a chance to respond by Sunday. I lead the first week. You don't have to grade me on it, rate me on it. There's often a time where like somebody doesn't do their post or just one post isn't very popular and I do that. And then you don't have to. Throughout at the end of each module, oftentimes they're going to be identifications or you're going to be asked to define important terms and then explain the importance of these terms to the psychology of gender. Why is it important to talk about that particular term in this class? A lot of people will miss that second half. And I don't want to give you only 5 points out of 10. So make sure you do both halves. At midterm and final, you will also have short essays. In addition to the discussions that are led by either me or your fellow students, I wanted to give you the opportunity to do your own reflection each week. And so you will also do blogs. And so there are no prompts for these. Instead, you're going to write about anything that strikes you about that topic. If you can tie it to other things, that's great. But the biggest thing is you're going to write about this is what really struck me from this topic that we're talking about. Um, for the blogs, they are 10 points each. There are 80 points total. There are 10, but you get to skip 2. So if you miss one, that's fine. If at the end of the semester you're exhausted and you need to miss one, that's fine. You're also going to comment on at least one other student's blog each week. Like your discussions, these are going to be involved. You want to really get a dialogue going. And I've had some really good dialogues happen on these blogs. So I highly encourage it. Again, same thing. You're going to post your blogs by 11:59 on Wednesday, and then comment on another classmate's blog by 11:59 on Sunday. There's a rubric for the blogs as well. Then you have a couple short papers you'll write throughout the semester. One is one of my fave assignments. I did this when I was an undergrad, and it's really fun. You're going to interview someone who is different than you in one or more ways. So maybe they are a different gender identity, they are differing in abilities from you, they have a different sexuality or religion, something like that. And then you're going to write a paper about it. And this is due, I'll show you when it's due in the modules, but it's due kind of around midtermy time, if I remember. So you're going to introduce your person, tie what you talked about to 3 themes in class, and then conclude. So that's fun and a short paper to write. And then I mentioned you're going to have these virtual events in my other video, and these are where you're going to reflect on things online. If you get a chance to do something in person, that's also cool, but I know this is a very short class, so that doesn't always happen. So Psychology's Feminist Voices is a great thing here. There are online exhibits from various museums, and interactive exhibits related to gender, or you can just write about a TV show you're watching. I'm rewatching Buffy the Vampire Slayer now. There's a lot of good material you could talk about in there. These are really short papers where you're just going to summarize the event, the exhibit, this TV show episode. You're going to reflect on it, and then you're going to write about how it relates to class material. These are like a page or 2. Then your big project for this class is your research proposal project, where you are going to write a proposal that if I gave you infinite time and infinite money, what would you do research on related to gender? So to give you some cool examples people have done in the past, I had someone who wanted to do something about dancers, and they were going to fly in like Misty Copeland, the ballerina, to do the lessons for the experiment, right? Something really cool like that. And it can really be about anything you want as long as you can link it to gender, which is honestly just about any topic. If you think about even something like Alzheimer's disease, women tend to be caregivers for those with Alzheimer's much more often than men, right? So you can imagine writing a paper about that. And so the various steps for this are broken up throughout the semester. So it's not going to be one big thing all at once. You'll have little assignments starting in module 2 to build you up to it. And then at the end of the semester, you're putting everything together. So the very first thing at the end of module 2, you're going to tell me, what are you interested in for your topic? And then I'm going to give you feedback on here's how you can narrow that in, things along those lines. Then at the end of module 3, you're going to start thinking about how can I do a research study about this? And we're talking about an experiment or a correlational study where you're going to give people questionnaires, and then you're going to write hypotheses of what you might expect to find. And they've got some great links about how to write those. And I've got a great video about how do you find resources using our library resources. There's also great links and guides created by our research librarians. So this first assignment is like less than a page. You're going to write 3 hypotheses with at least 2 citations. And then at the end of module 4, you'll write probably your biggest chunk of the paper, and this is your literature review. A lot of people get confused about what's a literature review. Basically, if you read a research article in a psychology journal, your literature review is the introduction section, that first chunk, where you are going to introduce your topic, summarize the theoretical literature and the data focused literature about that topic, and lead up to your hypotheses. You're setting it up. Again, some great things about how you write a lit review, an APA sample paper, and then here is where I will grade you. So, you're going to clearly define your topic, tie it to theory, tie it to previous data related findings, and then this topic clearly relates to psychology, but also to gender. At the end of module 5, you're going to think about the logistics of how you do the study, right? So what sort of tests and measures would you want to do? Do you need materials, right? Do you need a dance studio? Do you need grand pianos, right? Do you just need a computer for the people to do some sort of a learning-based test on? So you're going to be thinking about those things. And so for your 5th assignment, you will do a draft of the method section of your proposal, and you're going to answer each of these questions. What would you need, and how would you outline each thing? At the last module, 7/8, you're going to do a 5 to 10 minute video presentation walking us through your hypothetical study proposal. And then you're going to put together, copy paste everything you've done to that point, and make a paper that you'll turn in as well. Alrighty, so here is your course schedule. As you can see, you always have things due Wednesday and Sunday. And I try to put the bigger assignments due on Sunday just because that gives you a little more time. But typically your blogs will be due Wednesday, and then your responses to blogs are due Sunday, and bigger things like responses to discussions. And so you'll see we'll be covering feminist psychology and power and privilege in module 1. We'll be talking about gender similarities and differences and beyond the sex and gender binary in module 2. In module 3, we'll be talking about how do we learn how to do gender socialization, and also women's bodies. In chapter 4, we will have sexuality and sexualization and relationships. And relationships goes beyond romantic. We're going to talk about families and things like that as well. And then in module 5, we'll have reproduction and mothering and relationships. And I'm realizing this can't be right. I'll look up what chapter 8 versus chapter 10 is if I put the right topic there. Apologies that is incorrect. So that's when your others live paper is due as well. So as I said, a little bit after midterm time. And then we'll talk about older women and gender-based violence. And we'll talk about mental health and thoughts for the future at the very, very end. In terms of course policies, I do accept late work if need be. That being said, do not let yourself get behind. In this class, you will regret it. And I am not like a threat, but it goes fast. I'm just trying to advise you. There's some ideas about netiquette and the honor code and the learning center here as well. So I hope this is helpful. Please reach out to me via email if you have any questions.